It all started when I found out my parents paid for my brother's honeymoon with my ex-girlfriend, using the emergency fund I'd been contributing $2,000 a month to for 5 years. So, I did the only thing that made sense. I pulled out the remaining $83,000, their next emergency. Not my problem. Hey Reddit, I'm Alex, 32M. I'm writing this from my new apartment. Finally able to breathe without feeling like I'm suffocating under the weight of everyone else's expectations. The last few months with my family have been absolutely insane, and I just need to get this story out before I lose my mind. For most of my life, I've been the responsible one, the reliable son, the family ATM disguised as a human being. My younger brother Dylan, 28M, has been the golden child since the day he was born, literally. Mom had complications during his delivery and spent a week in the ICU. Ever since, he's been treated like some kind of miracle baby who can do no wrong. Growing up, the difference between us was almost comical. When I turned 10, I got a bike from Walmart. When Dylan turned 8, he got a custom-built BMX with premium parts. When I wanted my first car, I mowed lawns all summer to afford a beat-up 98 Honda Civic, busted AC, passenger door only opened from the outside. Dylan? He got a brand new Mustang the day he got his license. No job, no effort, paid in full by mom and dad. When I graduated high school with a 3.8 GPA, we went to Applebee's. And Dad spent the whole dinner talking about Dylan's upcoming freshman year. When Dylan barely scraped by with a 2.4 GPA, they threw him a full-blown graduation party, catered dinner, DJ, maybe 200 guests. That pattern never stopped. I put myself through community college while working full-time as a mechanic. Eventually earned my degree in automotive technology, started from the bottom, learned every part of the business, and opened my own repair shop 5 years ago, Alex Auto Solutions. It's doing well now, pulling in around $180,000 annually after expenses. But it came from sweat, sacrifice, and 60-hour weeks. I worked for every single penny. Dylan, on the other hand, tried 3 different colleges, dropped out of all of them. First was State University, lasted 1 semester before deciding the professors were too demanding. Then came community college, made it a year before getting kicked out for failing grades. Then technical school for HVAC repair, quit after 3 weeks because, quote, he didn't like getting dirty. He's worked maybe 6 months total in the past 10 years. His longest job was at a vape shop, part-time, 20 hours a week, in which he quit because the hours were too demanding. And through all of it, Mom and Dad never stopped babying him. Every excuse, they bought it. Every failure, they romanticized it. He's finding himself. Not everyone's path is traditional. Meanwhile, I was breaking my back trying to build something real. I'll never forget one Thanksgiving. Dylan announced he was dropping out of college again. I had just closed a massive deal with the fleet management company, after pulling 80-hour weeks to make it happen. Dad raised his glass and said, "We're proud of you, Dylan, for knowing when something isn't right for you. That takes courage." I just sat there thinking about my student loans, the ones I'd been paying off alone since no one had ever raised a glass for me. About 7 years ago, Dad sat me down. He said he was worried about Mom's health. She'd just had a cancer scare. It turned out benign, but it shook them up. He said, "We want to start a family emergency fund, something we can all contribute to for medical expenses, home repairs, whatever crisis might come up. It'll give us peace of mind." Made sense. I'd always been good with money, had my own emergency savings, and wanted to help. So I said, "Sure, I can do $500 a month." Dad looked uneasy. Stirring his coffee, he said quietly, "Actually, we were hoping you could do $2,000. Dylan's in a tough spot right now, so he can't contribute much. Maybe $50 or $100 when he can." $2,000. That's $24,000 a year. But I looked at them, saw the worry in their faces about Mom's health, and I caved. I agreed. Every month for 5 years, I transferred $2,000 into a joint savings account that Dad managed. My name was on it, along with theirs. But I never touched it. Never even checked the balance. Just treated it like another utility bill. Meanwhile, Dylan's contributions were, symbolic. Some months he'd send $50. Most months, nothing. Once he sent $200 and Mom acted like he'd just saved the family. "We're so proud of you, Dylan. You're really stepping up." I didn't say a thing. Just kept doing what I always did on being the good son, the reliable one. The emergency fund wasn't the only way I helped either. When Dad's truck needed a new transmission, I did the work myself. Parts alone cost me $2,200, and I spent an entire weekend in my shop getting it done. When their water heater died in the middle of January, I covered half the replacement cost and about $800 because that's what families do, right? At least that's what I told myself back then. When Dylan crashed his car, texting while driving, of course, I didn't even hesitate. I fixed it in my shop completely free of charge. The only thing I made him pay for were the parts, which still came to around $1,500. When Mom needed new tires, I got them wholesale and installed them myself. No labor cost, no questions asked. When their roof started leaking during the rainy season, I climbed up there, patched it temporarily, and even chipped in $2,000 toward the professional repairs. Every single time, I was the good son, the reliable one, the one they could always count on. And every single time, Dylan got a free pass. Because apparently he was going through a tough time, or between opportunities. My girlfriend back then, Rachel, 29, wasn't exactly a fan of how my family operated. We'd been together for 3 years, and she'd watched me drop everything for them over and over again. We had this dream vacation to Hawaii planned. Everything was booked, paid for, ready to go. Then, out of nowhere, Dad called. "Family emergency," he said. Translation: Dylan needed money again. This time for first and last month's rent because he'd been kicked out for not paying in 3 months. I told Rachel we'd have to cancel the trip. We were sitting in my apartment, laptop open, looking at the cancellation policy that said we'd lose $2,000 in deposits. She just stared at me in disbelief. "How is that an emergency, Alex?" she asked. "He's 25. Why can't he handle his own rent? Why can't your parents help him for once?" I sighed, repeating the same tired line my parents had drilled into me my whole life. "It's family. That's just what we do. They asked me because they know I'll help without judgment." She looked at me differently then, like she was seeing me for the first time and not in a good way. "No, Alex," she said quietly. "That's not what family does. That's what doormats do. They asked you because you always say yes. You're teaching them that your time, your money, your plans don't matter." We broke up 2 months later. She told me she couldn't be with someone who let himself get walked all over by people who didn't appreciate him. I was furious. I told her she was selfish, that she didn't understand family loyalty, exactly what my parents always wanted me to believe. When I told Mom about the breakup, she actually looked relieved. Said something like, "Rachel never really fit in with our family anyway." Looking back now, Rachel was right about everything. But back then I couldn't see it. Instead, I doubled down on my so-called family obligations. Proving her wrong became my new mission. About a year later, Dylan started dating someone new. At a family barbecue, he brought her along. I was at the grill, flipping burgers, when I heard this laugh behind me. Familiar, too familiar. My stomach dropped. It was Rachel. "Alex," she said, trying to sound surprised, but her voice cracked halfway through. Her eyes met mine for a second before darting away. "I had no idea Dylan was your brother." "What a small world!" Dylan was grinning, that same smug grin he'd had since childhood every time he got away with something. "Yeah," he said. "We've been seeing each other for a few months now. Pretty crazy coincidence, right?" He slipped his arm around her waist, pulling her closer like he was staking a claim. My parents, they were thrilled. Mom hugged Rachel, saying how great it was that she already knew the family. How that would make everything so much easier. Dad clapped Dylan on the back and said he'd done well, calling Rachel a real catch. Nobody seemed to think anything was wrong. Nobody looked at me to see how I was handling this. Later that night, after most of the guests left, I pulled Dylan aside by the fence. "What the hell are you doing dating someone I used to love?" I asked, barely keeping my voice steady. He just shrugged, hands in his pockets, not even pretending to feel guilty. "You two broke up over a year ago. You can't call dibs on people forever." "Bro," I said, "you knew exactly what you were doing. This wasn't a coincidence. You went after her deliberately." He shrugged again. "Rachel and I connected. She told me all about how you were always putting your family first, never making time for her. Guess she wanted someone who actually prioritizes relationships. The irony was almost funny. Dylan, of all people, talking about priorities. You're dating her to hurt me. Just admit it, I said. I'm dating her because she's hot and fun, and we have chemistry. Not everything's about you, Alex. He turned to walk away, but glanced back once more. Oh, and for what it's worth, he added, she said you were boring anyway. Too focused on work. Too serious. I'm way more fun. That one stung. But what hurt more was how my parents reacted, or didn't. When I told Mom how betrayed I felt, she called me immature. Dad said I should be happy my brother found someone good, and reminded me that I didn't own Rachel just because I dated her first. They acted like I was the problem, for having emotions, for not pretending everything was fine. So I did what I always did. I kept quiet. Rachel and Dylan became a full-on couple. They'd show up to family dinners hand in hand, whispering to each other, laughing at inside jokes, kissing like teenagers while my parents looked on with adoration. At Thanksgiving, they announced they were moving in together. Into an apartment I had helped Dylan pay the deposit for, months earlier, before I knew they were even seeing each other. When I pointed that out, Dad said, "Don't hold money over people's heads. Alex, you offered to help willingly." That's when something inside me started breaking. I stopped going to family gatherings. Couldn't stand to watch them play house while my parents treated it like some fairy tale romance instead of the betrayal it really was. My excuses became routine. Work's busy. I'm tired. I've got clients to meet. Anything to avoid sitting at that dinner table pretending I was okay. Mom never failed to guilt trip me, though. Family is important, Alex, she'd say. We hardly see you anymore. Dylan and Rachel miss you at dinner. They're always asking where you are. Of course they were, because I was the only one missing from their picture-perfect family story. The one they broke to build their version of happy. Mom started calling more often around Sundays. At first it was friendly check-ins, then came the guilt trips. By the end, she was leaving voicemails that sounded more like accusations than invitations. You're abandoning the family. Alex, you never come around anymore. You think you're too good for us now? I'd bet they really did miss me. But I kept sending the money anyway, that same emergency fund deposit every single month. $2,000 like clockwork, it became automatic. Just another bill. Something I didn't even think about anymore. By my count, I'd put in roughly $120,000 over 5 years. Dylan's contribution? Maybe $2,000, and that's me being generous. Honestly, half the time I suspected Mom gave him the money to deposit just so he wouldn't look like a complete freeloader. Then, about 3 months ago, Dylan proposed to Rachel. I didn't get a call, didn't get a text. I found out through Instagram. There it was, a photo of Dylan on one knee at sunset on some beach, Rachel crying with joy. Showing off a ring that probably cost more than he'd earned in the past year combined. The caption read, "She said yes. Can't wait to marry my best friend and start our forever together. Blessed future Mrs. Johnson, one lucky man." The comments started pouring in immediately. Mom, so happy for you both. You deserve all the happiness in the world. My baby boy is getting married, Dad. Proud of you, son. Welcome to the family officially, Rachel. Couldn't ask for a better daughter-in-law. My aunt. Beautiful couple. Congratulations, my dear. My cousin. About time. You two are perfect together. Not one person called me. Nobody thought to give me a heads up. I was just supposed to see it online, right, and be okay with it. I sat there on my couch, scrolling through all the comments, watching my family celebrate something that still felt like a punch in the gut. Not one of them acknowledged how screwed up the whole thing was. That night, I drank a beer and just stared at my phone. Tried to tell myself I was over Rachel, that I'd moved on. But it wasn't really about her anymore. Honestly, after seeing her with Dylan, I realized she wasn't even the person I thought she was. It was about the pattern, the complete disregard for how I felt. The expectation that I'd just keep taking it, keep smiling through it. A few hours later, my friend Jake came over. He's been my best friend since high school, the one person who's never bought into my family's "we're just close" excuse for dysfunction. He grabbed a beer from my fridge, sat down on the couch and said, "You know this is messed up, right?" I gave him my usual line. "It's complicated." "It's really not," he said, cracking open the can. They use you, man. You're the ATM, the free mechanic, the emergency fund, the reliable one who always fixes everything. What do you get out of this relationship, other than a constant reminder that you're underappreciated and broke? I didn't have an answer. The wedding was 3 months away. A destination wedding in Cancun, and they wouldn't shut up about it. Posts every other day. Venue tours, cake tastings, dress fittings, beach engagement photos, countdown to forever captions. Every post was another reminder that everyone was perfectly fine with this nightmare, except me. Sometimes Dylan would even tag me. Wish my best man was more excited, he wrote under a photo of tuxedos. I didn't reply. I wasn't planning to go. I hadn't told my parents yet, but there was no way I was sitting through a ceremony watching my brother marry my ex-girlfriend. Just the thought made me sick, imagining myself standing there, pretending to be happy while they said their vows. Then, 2 weeks ago, Mom called. It was a Thursday night. I was closing up the shop, finishing some paperwork when my phone buzzed. "Alex, honey," she said, voice unusually serious. "I need to talk to you about something important." Instantly, my stomach tightened. My first thought was health problems. My second thought, the emergency fund. Maybe after 5 years there was finally an actual emergency. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing's wrong exactly," she said. "It's about Dylan and Rachel's wedding." I waited. "The thing is," she continued, "they've been planning this beautiful destination wedding, but it's gotten expensive, much more than they expected. Between the venue, the travel, the hotel, the flights for them and the wedding party, the photographer, you know how costs add up." "Okay," I said slowly, already feeling that familiar sinking feeling. "So, they need to scale back?" "Well, that's what we thought at first," she said. "But this is Dylan's wedding, Alex. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. Your father and I talked, and we want to make sure he has the wedding he deserves. Every parent wants that for their child." The words hit me like a slow-motion punch. I knew exactly where this was going. "We're going to use the emergency fund," she said finally, "to cover the wedding costs. And their honeymoon." I froze. "The emergency fund?" I repeated. "You mean the medical emergency fund Dad said was for health crises or actual disasters? You're using it for a wedding?" "For your brother's wedding," Mom corrected, like that made it better. "Family is important, Alex. These are the moments we save for. Weddings, celebrations, bringing everyone together. That's what matters in life." My hand tightened around the phone. "No," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "That's not what we save for. We saved for emergencies, medical bills, home repairs, real crises. Not for funding a destination wedding for someone who hasn't contributed a fraction of what I have." "Alex, don't be like this," she said softly, almost scolding. "This is your brother's special day." She said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. He and Rachel are starting their life together. We just want to give them a beautiful memory. My brother's special day with my ex-girlfriend. The same woman he started dating just to hurt me. That's the special day my parents were bankrolling. I took a deep breath. "That special day," I repeated. Mom sighed into the phone, that disappointed tone she always used when I wasn't being understanding. "Alex, you need to let that go. Rachel and Dylan are in love now. You're letting jealousy poison what should be a happy time for our family. You need to be the bigger person here." I stared at the floor, trying to stay calm. "How much are you taking out of the emergency fund?" There was silence, just the sound of her breathing on the other end. "Mom," I said again, sharper this time. "How much?" "About 40,000, she said quietly. The wedding package was 32,000. It's a beautiful venue, right on the beach. And we're giving them 8,000 for the honeymoon. They want to go to Bora Bora. They've been dreaming about it. $40,000. I'd personally contributed $120,000 to that fund over 5 years, working 60-hour weeks, putting my own life on hold for this family, and they were just casually using a third of it to send my brother and my ex-girlfriend on their dream vacation. "I need to go," I said, my voice flat. "Alex, wait," Mom rushed out. "I wanted to talk about you being in the wedding party. Dylan thinks it would mean a lot." I hung up. I sat there in my office for what felt like an hour, just staring at the wall. I couldn't process what I just heard. My shop manager knocked at the door eventually, asking if I was okay. I told him I needed the rest of the afternoon off and drove home in a daze. On the way, I called Jake. My voice was shaking as I explained everything. He didn't even let me finish. You need to get your money out of that account. Right now, today, before they spend a dime more. It's a family emergency fund, I said. I can't just... Alex, listen to me, he cut in. They're not treating it like an emergency fund. They're treating it like Dylan's personal trust fund, one you've been bankrolling for years. They just spent $40,000 on a wedding. You think they'll stop there? Get your money out before they decide Dylan and Rachel need a house next. And deep down, I knew he was right. I'd put in $120,000. Dylan maybe $2,000. And somehow my parents decided to use my money for his wedding to my ex without even asking me. Not even pretending to ask. Just doing it and informing me after the fact. When I got home, I went straight to my laptop and logged into the joint account. My hands were shaking as I typed in the password. Balance, $97,433.52. Almost $100,000. The result of 5 years of sacrifice. 5 years of telling myself this was for family. And there it was in black and white. A withdrawal for $40,000. Labeled Wedding Honeymoon, Dylan and Rachel. They didn't even try to disguise it. Didn't even pretend it was for something legitimate. That's when I made my decision. I transferred $83,000 into my personal savings account, leaving behind roughly $14,433.52, about what Dylan had contributed over the years, plus a little cushion for my parents' minimal contributions. If they wanted to use family money for Dylan's wedding, they could use family money, not mine. The transfer went through instantly. My name was on the account, so no holds, no waiting, no verification. Just like that, in under 30 seconds, 5 years of hard work came back to me. I expected to feel guilty. I didn't. Instead, I felt free, like I'd been carrying a 100-pound weight for years and suddenly realized I could just set it down. The next morning, the storm hit. Dad called at 7 a.m. I was still in bed, barely asleep. He was livid. What the hell did you do? Why is most of the emergency fund gone? The bank sent me a notification about a large withdrawal. I sat up, keeping my tone calm. I withdrew my contributions. Roughly $120,000 over 5 years. I took out $83,000 and left the rest. That should more than cover what Dylan and you guys put in. You can't just take that money, he shouted. That's the family emergency fund. That's not how this works. Oh, you mean the emergency fund you used for Dylan's wedding without asking me? I shot back. That's not an emergency, Dad. That's you deciding Dylan's wants matter more than the purpose of the fund. So yeah, I'm prioritizing my financial security now. Something I should have done years ago. We needed that money for the wedding. He snapped. They've already put deposits down. The venue, the photographer, the caterer. It's all been arranged. No, I said, voice firm. You wanted that money for the wedding. There's a difference. Dylan's wedding isn't my responsibility. If he and Rachel can't afford the wedding they want, then maybe they should plan something they can afford, like adults. Unbelievable, Dad said, seething. You're being selfish, Alex. You're ruining your brother's wedding because you can't move on from a relationship that ended years ago. This is about Rachel, isn't it? You're being spiteful. That hit something deep. The anger just broke loose. Selfish? I repeated. I've given this family over $100,000 in 5 years for emergencies. I fixed your truck for free, paid for home repairs, helped Dylan with rent, skipped vacations to help when things went wrong, worked extra hours just to keep contributing, and somehow I'm the selfish one? I was pacing now, voice shaking. Dylan's the one who contributes nothing and still gets treated like royalty. He's your golden boy. You threw him a party for barely graduating high school, while I had to celebrate my honors degree at Applebee's. You bought him a car while I spent years saving for mine. He's your son who can do no wrong, even when he's dating my ex just to spite me. The line went quiet, and for the first time in years I didn't fill the silence. You've spent my entire life making it clear that Dylan's happiness matters more than mine, I said, my voice shaking but steady. So no, Dad, I'm done. I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done sacrificing while Dylan gets rewarded for being irresponsible. You want to fund his wedding? Then use your own money. There was a pause on the line. Then his voice dropped, low and furious. If you don't put that money back, you're not welcome at the wedding. You're not welcome at family gatherings. Your mother is devastated. Your brother... Good! I cut him off. I'm not planning on going to the wedding anyway. I don't want to stand there and watch my ex-girlfriend marry my brother while everyone pretends this is normal. Tell Dylan congratulations. Tell Mom I hope she's happy with her choices. I'm done. And before he could respond, I hung up. 5 minutes later, Mom called. Then Dylan. Then Rachel, which was audacious even for her. I let every call go to voicemail. Then came the messages. Dylan's texts were full of insults, calling me every name in the book, accusing me of destroying his wedding out of jealousy and spite. Mom sent paragraphs dripping with guilt, lectures about family unity, how disappointed she was, how she didn't raise me to be this cruel. Dad followed up with rage texts, incoherent, full of words like betrayal and selfishness, warning me I'd regret this decision. And Rachel? She sent this long, self-righteous message about how I was being petty and vindictive, how I couldn't let go of the past, and how I was punishing Dylan for finding love. Said I needed to grow up and be mature about it. I blocked all of them. Every number, every social media account, every single way they could reach me. Then I called Jake. I did it, I said quietly. I pulled the money out. He didn't hesitate. Good, how do you feel? I took a breath. Like I can finally breathe. The wedding went ahead, but not in Cancun. According to Jake, who heard from a mutual friend still in touch with my cousin, they had to downsize. Big time. The dream destination wedding turned into something local. No beach, no exotic resort, definitely no Bora Bora honeymoon. They ended up booking a hotel conference room instead of a beach in Mexico. My parents pitched in what they could from their own pockets, but it wasn't enough to save the grand plans. They simply couldn't afford it. The same parents who spent decades rescuing Dylan from his own failures suddenly couldn't come up with $40,000 when their emergency fund ATM at me shut down. And I'll be honest, I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. Part of me had worried guilt would hit me eventually, but it never did. 3 weeks after the wedding, though, a real emergency hit. Dad had a heart attack. A serious one, not a minor scare. He collapsed at home. Needed triple bypass surgery immediately. Mom called me from the hospital crying so hard I could barely make out her words. And for a split second, the old guilt crept back in. This was what that emergency fund was meant for. A real crisis. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. We don't have enough money for the surgery, she sobbed. Your father's insurance will cover part of it, but we're still looking at about $70,000 out of pocket for the procedure and recovery. We need the emergency fund, Alex. We need you to put the money back. Please, Gui, your father could die. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. What about the money that's still in the account? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. There's about $14,000 left, she said quickly, but that's not enough. The surgery's expensive, and then there's recovery, medications, physical therapy, follow-up appointments. Please, Alex, we need the full amount. We need you to put back what you took. This is exactly what we saved for. I sat there in my shop covered in grease, the call on speaker as I stared at the concrete floor. I'd been under a car when she called, had to roll out and take it in my office. I thought about the last 5 years. Every contribution, every late night, every extra shift. I thought about the time they told me I was selfish for taking my own money back. About them draining the fund for Dylan's wedding without even asking. About sitting alone while they toasted my brother and my ex-girlfriend. I'm sorry about Dad, I said finally, and I meant it. I didn't want him to die. Despite everything, he was still my father. But I can't help you. What do you mean you can't help? She cried. This is your father. He could die. Don't you understand? He needs this surgery or he'll die. You had money for this, Mom, I said quietly. Almost $100,000 in that account. Money I contributed for exactly this reason. But you chose to spend $40,000 of it on Dylan's wedding instead of keeping it for emergencies. That was your decision. But we didn't know this would happen, she said desperately. How could we have known? That's literally what emergency funds are for, I snapped. For the things you don't know will happen. For situations exactly like this. But you treated that fund like Dylan's personal bank account. I'm sorry, but this isn't my problem to fix anymore. Her voice hardened, sharp and cold. How can you be so cruel? Your father is lying in a hospital bed and you're talking about money? What kind of son are you? I raised you better than this. I swallowed hard. My father called me selfish for taking back my own money. My father decided to use that same fund for Dylan's wedding. My father spent my entire life making it clear that Dylan's wants come first. I'm sorry he's sick, I really am, but I'm not giving you $83,000 because you mismanaged what I contributed for 5 years. I paused, my voice breaking slightly. You had the money. You chose to spend it on a wedding instead of saving it for an actual emergency. That's not on me, Mom, that's on you. Her tone turned icy. If your father dies because of this, I'll never forgive you. Do you hear me? Never. His blood will be on your hands. I closed my eyes. Then you'll never forgive me, I said softly. But maybe you should save your anger for the people who decided a wedding was more important than an emergency fund. Maybe you should be angry at yourselves for making terrible financial decisions. There was a long silence on the line. Goodbye, Mom, I said finally, and hung up. I hung up and turned off my phone. That was 2 weeks ago. According to Jake, who still keeps in touch with some of my extended family, my dad pulled through the surgery. It went well. He's recovering now. But my parents had to take out a massive loan to pay for it, and they're buried in debt. Apparently, Dylan and Rachel are being pressured to help with the expenses, which has already started causing cracks in their shiny new marriage. Neither of them has any money. Rachel's working at a small boutique making barely above minimum wage, and Dylan still can't hold down a job. They're both drowning in their own bills. And now my parents are furious at me for not swooping in to save them. They've told the whole extended family that I refuse to help during a life or death emergency. Conveniently, they leave out the part where they drain the emergency fund to pay for Dylan's wedding. Some relatives took their side. I've gotten plenty of messages calling me heartless and cruel. My aunt called me a disgrace, and my uncle said I was no longer part of the family. Others, though, reached out quietly. They said they finally understood. That they'd always known my parents favored Dylan, but never realized how bad it really was. Yesterday, Dylan tried to show up at my shop. My employees told him I wasn't available and asked him to leave. The security cameras caught him standing outside for 20 minutes, yelling that I was a terrible brother, that I was killing our father, that I'd always been jealous. Eventually, he drove off. One of my guys asked if I wanted to call the cops. I told him no, not unless Dylan comes back, and I'll admit, part of me still feels guilty. That conditioning runs deep. The voice that says family comes first keeps whispering in the back of my mind. But there's a bigger part of me now, a stronger one, that feels free for the first time in years. I'm not the family ATM anymore. I'm not the responsible son who sacrifices everything for people who never once appreciated it. I'm just Alex, and I'm finally learning to be okay with that. I've started seeing someone new. Her name's Jenna. She's a physical therapist, and she actually respects boundaries. When I told her everything over dinner last week, she didn't call me selfish or cruel. She said my family had been financially abusing me for years, that what I did was right. She called it what it really was, exploitation, not family. I'm using some of the money I withdrew to finally take that Hawaii trip, the one Rachel and I never got to take. Jenna's excited. She keeps sending me pictures of beaches and hiking trails. Honestly, I'm excited too. It feels good to do something for myself, without guilt eating me alive. Meanwhile, my parents keep trying to reach me through relatives. They want me to help with their medical debt. Dylan and Rachel are still broke, still hinting through mutual friends that they need help with bills. Every time I give the same answer, no. The emergency fund is gone because they treated it like Dylan's personal piggy bank, not like an emergency fund. That's not my problem to fix. From what I hear, Dad's recovering well. He'll be fine. They'll figure things out like everyone else has to, by cutting back, working harder, being responsible. You know, all the things they never taught Dylan to do because they always just bailed him out with money. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I should have handled it differently. Maybe I could have talked to them first before pulling the money. Maybe I could have left a little more in the account just in case something like this happened. But then I remember Dylan proposing to Rachel on Instagram, the smug captions, the perfect lighting, the whole performance. I remember Mom's voice when she told me they were using the fund for the wedding, like it was already decided, like my opinion didn't matter. I remember Dad calling me selfish for taking back my own money, and I remember 30-plus years of being the reliable one, the one who always cleaned up the mess, the one they took for granted while Dylan got rewarded for his failures. So no, I don't regret it. That emergency fund was supposed to be for real emergencies. They turned it into Dylan's wedding fund without even consulting the person who contributed 95% of it. When the real emergency came, they had no one to blame but themselves. I'm done being their safety net. Done being the person they drain every time Dylan screws up. Done sacrificing my happiness, my peace, and my future for people who see me as nothing more than a resource. Rachel texted me last week from a new number, one I hadn't blocked yet. She said she hoped I was happy ruining Dylan's life, that my vindictiveness had destroyed their honeymoon and put financial stress on their marriage. She called me pathetic, said Dylan deserved better than a brother like me. I didn't respond. I just blocked the new number and went back to planning my Hawaii trip with Jenna. Last night, Jake and I were having beers at our usual spot, the bar we've been going to since college. He looked at me and asked, "Any regrets?" I thought about it for a long time. Really thought about it. Then I said, I regret ever contributing to that fund in the first place. I regret letting them treat me like an